In week 6, we saw Falcons defensive coordinator Jimmy Lake switch up their scheme, and we'll break down what worked and what didn't.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, guys, if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. the Jolly Green Giant, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for a very long time, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP. Still going strong on this illustrious podcast, and I thank each and every one of you that goes strong with me as everydayers. And to become an everydayer, all you have to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. So today is our week 6 All-22 review, where I've looked at the film. I'll break some of the things that stood out to me. Later in the episode, we'll talk a little bit about trade rumors for the Falcons, going for a big splash pass rusher. We'll talk about the recent roster moves with Micah Abernathy going to IR. But the bulk of today's episode will be focused on the good and bad of Jimmy Lake's, the Falcons defensive coordinator scheme changes. And we're going to start off with the bad. You know me, Mr. Drew, right? That negative Nancy. So the Falcons basically tried to run a little bit more of a Ryan Nielsen scheme, which just continues to reiterate the point that I think, you know, these guys are watching the podcast or reading my work over at Falcoholic, because I wrote an article last week talking about, you know, incorporating more Ryan Nielsen looks into this defense as a way to improve it. And the way that they did that in this game was they ran more man coverage than we have seen for the most part this season, right? In the first half, they ran man coverage on 26% of their plays. That was 6 plays in the first half, primarily 2 men under, which was a staple of the Ryan Nielsen scheme. And entering this week, the Falcons only ran man coverage on about 17% of their plays. It wasn't very effective. Carolina had success on 5 of those 6 plays, so a success rate of 83%. And they basically scrapped it in the second half. They only ran man coverage on just 1 of 17 plays, so 6% in the second half. And you contrast that to the first 5 games of the season, where the Falcons man coverage was pretty effective, right? It was one of the reasons why I thought, hey, maybe you should run more man coverage, because it seems to work, right? The Falcons, or opposing team success rate against the Falcons man coverage through the first 5 games was 38%. That's a very good number. And obviously in this game, it kind of flipped on them. Now, one variable that may have influenced why the man coverage was less effective in this game than it had been in previous games was that the Falcons were not necessarily dialing up pressure in those man coverage situations, right? That through the first 5 games, on about 52% of those calls that had the Falcons playing man coverage, they rushed 5 or more rushers on a 52, over half of those plays, right? In this game, they only did it on 2 of the 7 man coverage calls. So they were not necessarily dialing up those, 5-6 man pressures and sometimes 7 man pressures when they would run cover 0 in this game like they have done before. They were bringing some forms of pressure. They did run simulated pressures with 4 rushers, often using Caden Ellis to rush the quarterback and then dropping one of the edges in coverage so that you still have 4 rushers. And the 2 times they did bring 5 or more in this Panthers game was on the Deontay Johnson touchdown in the first quarter, and then the 18-yard scramble by Andy Dalton later in the game. Now, another element that was of Nielsen-esque in Jimmy Lake's game plan was the usage of the Ruby dime defense, right? As a reminder, for those of you that don't know what dime defense is, that is when the defense deploys 6 defensive backs on the football field. And the Ruby dime is when you use a front that includes 3 linemen and 2 off-ball linebackers. And that was something that the Falcons wanted to use a lot of last year until Troy Anderson got injured. And then they mostly scrapped it with Nate Landman in the lineup because, as we've discussed many times, Nate Landman was not the greatest coverage guy. And the Falcons would primarily use their dime defense under Ryan Nielsen with on 3rd downs, on 3rd and longs and 3rd and mediums and whatnot. And the traditional dime that the Falcons often resorted to most weeks last year after Troy Anderson's injury was where you had 4 linemen and 1 off-ball linebacker. Now, prior to this game, the Falcons had just used dime I believe 5 times in the first 5 weeks of the season. They used it 8 times in this game. Mostly Kevin King served as that 6th defensive back, right? But we did get 1 snap of Richie Grant serving as that 6th defensive back, which resulted in a pressure on the opening drive. As I mentioned earlier, Nielsen primarily used that dime on 3rd and medium, 3rd and long. Lake was using it on 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down. It didn't really matter. And again, it wasn't that effective. Right. And so saying all that, I like that Jimmy Lake was trying to do different things and incorporating some of the Nielsen stuff. Right. It didn't work. Right. But I feel like this defensive personnel is better geared towards the Ryan Nielsen style of defense, the 4-3, the press man coverage. Because again, 75% of this defensive roster is holdovers from last year. And we saw them, in the offseason kind of remake their defense in order to fit the Ryan Nielsen scheme. And it's part of the reason why I don't think the defense is performing up to par, is because a lot of the things that they're trying to do this year is very different from what they were doing last year. And this personnel better fits what they were doing last year. But they tried to incorporate some of the things that they were doing last year against the Carolina Panthers. It wasn't effective. So I'll be curious to sort of see if they will continue that, or is this a one-off? Is this hey, we tried something new and let's go back to our tried and trues. Let's go back to our staples. Let's get rid of the new wrinkles. So that will be something that I will be paying attention to in the coming weeks. And one of those tried and trues has been the Falcons' usage of cover 3, right? That has been their primary coverage through the first 5 games. But this was the first game where the cover 3 was not their primary coverage. And that proved to be more effective given the new wrinkles, the switching up the coverages. And we'll break down, why that was and why that led to some improvements from the 3rd down defense as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Now, with the trade deadline approaching, there are some NFL teams that are out there still looking for the right professionals that fit their roster. And you, as a small business owner, can be doing the same this fall by, going to LinkedIn Jobs. It's so much easier than you to try to get Howie Roseman to not fleece you in a trade. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't any just job board. They are going to help you find the right professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a job, but just might be open for that perfect role in any given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Join the 2.5 million small businesses that use LinkedIn for hiring by posting your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 10 million active members, because it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Because unlike other apps, Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Pick more or less on up to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. And if you're looking to get in on the action because certain sports books aren't available in your state, don't worry, Prize Picks is, and withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure, and you can get your money in as quickly as 15 minutes. And so if you're looking to get in on some action this weekend against a beat-up Seattle Seahawks secondary, maybe you want to take more on Darnell Mooney, 53.5 receiving yards, Drake London, more 69.5 receiving yards. So check it out by downloading Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game. So as I mentioned, this week was the first game where the Falcons' primary coverage was not cover 3. Right, through 5 games, the Falcons have run cover 3 on about 39% of their coverages. Now, in week 3, cover 3 was tied with quarters, cover 4, as their primary coverage in that game. And, that to me was specific to the Chiefs, because that is the primary coverage that most teams tend to play against the Kansas City Chiefs these last couple of years. So, I don't really count that one. But this week, the Falcons only ran cover 3 on 18% of their plays against the Panthers, and cover 2 and cover 6 were their primary coverages. Cover 2, they ran 30% of the time, cover 6, 20% of the time. And, some of that is owed to specifically in the 4-minute and 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, where they were basically alternating between those two coverages. But, they did dial up a little bit more cover 3 in the second half, especially after they scrapped man coverage. And they're like, okay, well, we tried the man coverage in the first half. It didn't work. Let's go back to our tried and true cover 3 in the second half. But cover 2 remained their primary coverage in the second half, accounting for about 40% of their second half coverage shells, and cover 6 was about 24%, equal to the cover 3 usage. And the cover 2 and cover 6 proved effective, not only in the second half, but throughout the game. Carolina's success rate against the Falcons cover 2 was 33%. Carolina's success rate against the Falcons cover 6 was 0%. And that conflicts somewhat with the first 5 games. Now, the cover 2 was pretty effective in the first 5 games. Opposing teams' success rate when the Falcons were running cover 2 was only 38%. Again, a good number. But cover 6, it was 82%. And so teams were pretty effective when they ran cover 6, but not this week. And so, of course, it begs the question of, like, is this a specific outcome? Did the Falcons suddenly figure out their cover 6, or is just Carolina bad, right? Probably lean towards the latter, but we need a few more data points before we can draw any sort of strong conclusions. But, despite the Falcons majoring in cover 3, it hasn't been that effective for them as their zone coverage, right? Their success rate through 5 games has been about 56%. Now, granted, if you remove the cover 3 and just look at all of their other zone coverages, success rate in the first 5 games was still about 56%. But, like, to me, that basically tells me, like, you shouldn't be married to cover 3 to the degree that you have been through the first 5 weeks, because it's not significantly more effective than literally the field is in terms of running any other coverage in that regard. So again, the question is going to be, are we going to see this Falcons team continue to major in cover 3, or are they going to be a little bit more open to being variable on the back end? Are we going to see more cover 2? Are we going to see more cover 6? Are we going to see, more quarters and whatnot? So the Falcons, it did seem effective, talking about how the Falcons were able to get into more 3rd and longs in this game, where Carolina was behind the chains on 3rd downs a lot more. And you've heard me mention several times on the podcast in recent weeks that there is a very solid correlation between how good your 3rd down defense is and how often you put opposing teams in 3rd and long, right? That basically 3rd and longs are harder for offenses to convert. And so the more times you force teams in 3rd and long, the better your 3rd down defense is going to be, right? And the Falcons in this Carolina game saw 6 3rd and longs, 6 out of 11. So about 55% of their 3rd and longs or their 3rd downs were 3rd and long. And the NFL average is 47%. So basically, the Falcons look like a normal 3rd down defense. This is what a normal NFL defense sees most weeks, based off of, how often they were able to get Carolina in 3rd and long. And prior to this game, through 5 games, the amount of 3rd and longs the Falcons defense faced was a league low 28%. So again, much, much lower than what the league average is. About half of your 3rd downs are going to be 3rd and longs based off of the league average. And the Falcons were down at like a quarter of that. And that's a reason that, to me, is the main reason why the Falcons entered this game as the worst 3rd down defense in the NFL. But hey guys, there's good news. We moved up a spot. We're now 31st. So we're making steady progress. And just say, we get another 15 weeks of this, we might, get to league average in terms of 3rd down defense. But we'll see how that goes. But, I think a part of it was owed to, because the Falcons were deploying, cover 6 on 1st downs, that proved effective. And so that got Carolina into more 2nd and longs. And then on 2nd down, the Falcons were running more cover 2, and that proved also effective in those situations. And you got those early down stops that allow the defense to be ahead of the chains, or the offense to be behind the chains, and that led to a lot of their success. So, previously on 2nd and long, for example, like the Falcons were primarily playing cover 3 and cover 4, and they were not really stopping teams from getting into more 3rd and manageable situations by, if it's 2nd and 10, the offense is getting 7-8 yards against that cover 3 or that cover 4 to get them into a 3rd and short and whatnot. And so to me, I think that, one of the first steps, I don't know if it's you got to stop the run is probably the first step, but we'll see on that issue. I don't know if the Falcons are just, they're just going to take that L on that one, but we'll see. But, I think one of the main ways that the Falcons can improve their defense is by solving these 3rd down issues. And I think that's going to benefit their pass rush as well, right? And it's been discussed by myself and by Jarvis Davis, Locked On Sports Atlanta, and others, that if you can get opposing offenses behind the sticks on third down, on third and long, that's going to allow our pass rushers to be able to pin their ears back and get them into more advantageous situations where they can start getting the pressure and the sacks that will make us look like a halfway decent pass rush as opposed to the current NFL's worst pass rush. So, I know a lot of people are just under the assumption that, hey, we just got to make a trade for a big time pass rusher and that's going to solve our pass rush needs. You're not going to hear me talk about that that much on this podcast, as I've sort of hinted here and there over the last couple of episodes, because I just don't think that's really going to solve the problem for two main reasons, right? The trade deadline is November 5th. But like, to me, the first reason is I don't think those trades are as realistic as people would lead you to believe. And the second reason is I don't know if those big time pass rushers are really going to solve the issue if the Falcons continue to face a lot of third and shorts, right? For example, right, a nice fun piece of trivia that you can tell your friends, who's got the most sacks in the NFL over since 2021 on third and longs? It's Myles Garrett with 16. You know who's number 3 on that list? It's Matthew Judon with 13. Okay. And you look at how many sacks guys get in third and short. Garrett only has 1.5 sacks in third and short. So if you're constantly facing third and short, it's like Myles Garrett's not solving your problem. He has 1.5 sacks on third and short. Matthew Judon only has 1 sack on third and short. So a similar issue. Now, if you're curious, I'm sure you are, like, okay, who actually leads the NFL since 2021 on sacks on third and short? It's Micah Parsons, right? Of course, it's Micah Parsons, right? Now, it's interesting. Parsons is interesting because he doesn't have a lot of sacks on third and long, but he gets a ton of sacks on third and short. But if you've been in every day of this podcast, you know that we've talked about the potential of the Falcons trading for Micah Parsons. We talked about it back during the summer, but we talked about how that was a March of 2025 trade at the earliest, and it's not going to happen between that. There's no real reason for Dallas to trade him at this point in time. We can certainly have a conversation about Micah Parsons being a future Falcon here on this podcast, but as I said in July, and I will reiterate now in October, that is a 2025 conversation, not a 2024 conversation. But let's talk for a minute about all the trade rumors that you constantly see. And will the Falcons? Have been asked by dozens of people now. There's dozens of us, right? About would the Falcons trade for it? Like, again, would the Falcons love to trade for a pass rusher? I'm sure they would. But like, the reality of these big time pass rushers being on the move, I think is just kind of made up. Like, the Browns aren't trading Myles Garrett. Why would they? The Cowboys aren't trading Micah Parsons at least until March of 2025, right? The Raiders aren't seemingly going to trade Maxx Crosby. I know there are rumors that, hey, if they traded Devontae Adams, which they did on Tuesday morning to the New York Jets, that, he would ask out. But the quotes I've actually seen Maxx Crosby say, rather than the rumors surrounding that, is that he's basically like, he's not happy about the Raiders trading Devontae Adams, but he basically said it is what it is, same crap, different day, that sort of thing. He's just kind of frustrated with the whole situation in Las Vegas, which is understandable, but we'll have to wait and see if it gets to a level where he's demanding a trade. But it is interesting to me because basically Maxx Crosby used that one card this offseason in getting Antonio Pierce hired. Be like, basically, if you don't hire this guy, I'm demanding a trade. And so it wouldn't make any sense for me to basically the Raiders 9 months later to basically be like, okay, well, now we're trading Maxx Crosby and we're going to roll, So like, I don't see that as realistic as maybe other people see that. I've seen other people talk about the Jaguars because of their struggles, trading Trevon Walker or Josh Hines-Allen. They just paid Josh Hines-Allen, so they're not going to trade him. And Walker, like Trent Baalke's not going to trade his number 1 pick, especially now that Aiden Hutchinson is down for the season. And now, Walker has like 6 sacks in 5 games. And it's, a situation where he can make up ground on that whole number 1 pick conversation. So why would they trade him? Hassan Reddick, like the Falcons are not going to trade for Hassan Reddick. That ship sailed months ago. We talked about that the day before we traded for Matthew Judon. We spent 10 minutes talking about how the Reddick trade was not likely, but a Judon trade was at least in the realm of possibilities. Again, I know you guys don't give me any credit for that, but go check the tape, right? So like, these trades aren't likely to happen. Now, maybe the Falcons can get a mid-tier pass rusher. Maybe they could convince the Giants to trade him Azeez Ojulari, a trade that we talked about in the offseason as a possibility. But, given that the Giants defense is the only thing that's keeping that team competitive, I don't think they would be trading. I don't think they would. You would need to blow them away with an offer, I would guess. But we'll see on that front. That to me is the most plausible of the ones I've seen thrown around out there. to me, if the Falcons are going to make a trade at the trade deadline, it's much more likely that they're going to trade, say, Kentavious Street or somebody like that on the back end of the D tackle rotation for another sort of role rotational player, right? That to me is the most likely realistic trade or whatnot. I think a lot of the trade rumors are the savior complex. It's the idea that we're just one piece away from solving all of our defensive issues. And I hope I've illustrated today that like the Falcons need other issues to fall into place, and it's not just drop Myles Garrett into the situation or drop Micah Parsons into the situation and all your problems are solved. Although they would certainly help, but like it's not as if this notion of like, oh man, they're gonna solve again. I think the Falcons have to solve other issues first, right? We got to get a normal third down defense to have a chance that, one of these big time pass rushers is really going to help us in a major way. And we also need to learn how to stop the run. That's another issue. But again, I kind of throw up my hands on that one. But we'll see on that front. So, I say pump the brakes on all the fanfic, on all the trade talk and all the trade rumors, and believing, hey, we're in prime striking conditions. We're going to go out there and make a big splash at the trade deadline. Again, they might trade somebody, but it'll probably be a backup for a role player or whatever, something like that. I don't think the Falcons are making a big splash. But again, I would love to be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time. It would be like the third time, I've been wrong about the Atlanta Falcons. So, we will move off of the fanfic. We will get into a realistic conversation about the roster and the shakeup from the Falcons putting Micah Abernathy on IR and how that's going to impact their special teams unit as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So NFL fans, make sure you start this season or continue this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So, you can go to the same page at FanDuel.com where you place your bets. It's the same place you can go, if you have that hunch in the middle of the game when you're like, I feel like someone's going to score the next touchdown. Boom, hit it up, right? You can also check out, the latest stats, view live play-by-play all on that same page. And when you head on over to FanDuel.com, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And if you want to place your first $5 bet on the Atlanta Falcons to cover the 3-point spread this week at home against the Seattle Seahawks, go check it out. You want to bet on the Georgia Bulldogs. You want to bet on the upcoming NBA season. You want to bet on the MLB playoffs. It's all there for you at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So again, head on over to FanDuel.com to check out the action. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. So, normally we try to break down the offense on these all-22 reviews, but to be honest with you, there wasn't any sort of strong conclusions that I drew from the offense watching the film. There's some things that I think are worthy of talking about, like looking at the run game. We'll look at some of the passing game stuff. I got to take my shots at Darnell Mooney and whatnot any chance I get. We'll talk about the infamous Kyle Pitts quitting on the route play as well. That's all there for you guys on the extended all-22 review. And we'll talk about some of the defensive stuff. We'll talk about the run defensive issues and why I don't think it's working and whatnot. We'll talk about how Nate Landman's 94 PFF grade is the fakest thing that's ever happened in the history of sports. All of that will be available for you on the extended all-22 review. And if you want to check that out, you want to get that crisp, high-definition film look at the all-22. If you're a visual learner, not an audio learner or whatnot, check out the link in the description below at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnFalcons. You can become a Locked On Falcons insider and get access to that extended all-22 review. Not only you'll get my thoughts on all the various roster moves, the insiders got my thoughts on the Micah Abernathy roster move and the Matt Hennessy roster move a few hours ago. You get my updates on game day. You get some of the things I'm percolating on. You want me to shoot down your Myles Garrett dreams of a trade, I can do that as well. All there for you as a Locked On Falcons insider. And it's a 14-day free trial. So you can try it out for 2 weeks. You can have all your Myles Garrett takes shot down by me for free. And then, if you enjoy that suffering, then why not pay $4.99 a month thereafter to get more access to those extended all-22 reviews and all the other various things that the Locked On Falcons insiders get. But let's wrap up by talking about something real rather than the fanfic of these big time trades. Let's talk about the Falcons putting Micah Abernathy on injured reserve. He suffered that knee injury against the Panthers in the first quarter. Raheem Morris called it severe on Monday and said he would miss significant time. And so the assumption, reading between the lines, this is a season-ending injury without it being without Raheem Morris basically saying it's a season season-ending injury. Replacing Abernathy on the roster will be Matt Hennessy, who's been, up on the active roster from the practice squad the last several weeks. The Falcons did sign safety Dane Cruikshank, who was earlier on the practice squad, who they cut in recent weeks to deal with the offensive line injuries. He's resigned to the practice squad at Cruikshank. They also added another backup offensive lineman, guard/tackle Corey Crunk. Lil John is smiling somewhere, but no, all these all the shuffling on the backup offensive line still makes me wonder, like, why is Kyle Hinton still out here, to continue to be employed by this team? Like, they have so many alternative options as far as backup interior offensive linemen go. I typically am not the type of guy that says we need to cut this guy or fire this guy. I don't root for guys to lose their jobs, but I'm just like Kyle Hinton. He got his shot last year. We didn't have better options. It made sense then, but I still don't understand, like, why now he continues to get that shot when we've added Hennessy, we've added Wilkinson. You do now have better options. We have seen Elijah Wilkinson start games in this offense. We have seen Matt Hennessy start games in this offense. They are better than Kyle Hinton. Not to mention you still have Javon Gwynn on the roster. So, I feel like Kyle Hinton's job, his roster spot should be going to somewhere else, a LaCale London. Hopefully that may beef up the run defense a little bit. But, hey, shout out to you, Kyle Hinton. Keep getting them checks, my guy. I respect the hustle. We all got to do what we got to do. So keep getting them checks, my guy. So in all seriousness, no, losing Abernathy, though, is going to be a blow to the special teams. He's been a staple there. He's been, a wing on the kickoff coverage unit. He's been a gunner on the punt coverage unit. My expectation is that we'll see Antonio Hamilton replace him there. I thought Hamilton and Kadero Hodge, the other gunner on the punt coverage team, would be the gunners entering the season. Obviously, Abernathy was able to take that job. I thought Abernathy would be a wing on the punt coverage team instead of Richie Grant, because I thought Richie Grant would have a regular role in defense. We have not seen Richie Grant have that regular role in defense. Maybe the Falcons will switch things up moving forward, but they have Grant out there as that wing. So we'll see. Cruikshank also has experience as a gunner as well. So it's possible that the Falcons could elevate him to the roster and ask him to be that gunner on game day. So the Falcons will have some options on Micah Abernathy, but he has been a core special teams player these last 2 seasons and been a very valuable contributor to that. So that is a significant blow to the special teams. Hopefully, whether it's Cruikshank, whether it's Antonio Hamilton, some of those guys can step up and fill those shoes. So that is going to be a blow to the Falcons on special teams. We'll see what, if the Falcons can compensate by, continue to that upward trajectory on offense. And if we can just start building off of this Carolina, hopefully this Carolina defensive performance, some of the positives from this game. Again, I can't believe that we struggled to cover the Panthers receivers in man coverage. So again, I want to believe that's just a one-off, but hopefully some of the positives that we saw in this game, we will continue to build upon in future weeks against Seattle, against Tampa Bay, against Dallas, against New Orleans, etc. in the coming weeks. So hopefully, there's a sign of things to change, or, are we going to be sitting here a week from today and being like, oh, well, the Falcons went back to, tried and true cover 3. And again, maybe it clicks, in week 7, as opposed to, the first 5 games of the season. But we'll just sort of have to see on that front. But that is going to do it for us, guys. Again, check out the extended All-22 review if you want to get, high definition actual film of me breaking down several of these things that I'm talking about, including taking a deeper dive in, Charlie Warner and his, blocking in the run game. We'll talk about why the run defense struggles in a major way. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with this personnel group is better suited to the 4-3 as opposed to the 3-4, and they're really struggling in those areas. But we'll get more into that in the extended All-22 review, again, which you can check out for free if you haven't signed up at that link in the description below at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnFalcons, 14-day free trial, and then $4.99 a month after that point. So go check it out, guys. Continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen. Of course, tomorrow's episode, your first listen, will be a crossover Thursday, where I will be joined by Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks to preview this Week 7 matchup between the Falcons and Seahawks. So continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen by subscribing or following for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And for your second listen, make sure you check out the Locked On NFL show with 2 shows daily. The madman Tyler Rowland giving you that shot of NFL espresso first thing in the morning with his takes on all the biggest stories around the NFL. I'm sure Tyler's going to be, weighing in on what trades he thinks should be happening, as well as Tony Wiggins, taking you to the barbershop for some real NFL talk as well with all these trades and whatnot. So go check it out. Locked On NFL is on the same podcast platforms you can find Locked On Falcons, including on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to it. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.